Greetings, family, and welcome to another episode of Ask Dr. Mumbi. My name is Dr. Mumbi.seraki. How you doing? How's everything going? I really do pray, family, that you are well in absolutely all your ways, and that you're moving into living life in a peaceful, just joyful way. Finally, after millennia, family, we can move into the golden age again. You know, this world had descended so much into darkness that it is alleged. There are stories that we may have missed our previous golden age and even descended further, which is why we feel so disconnected from the narratives of the past. It's not just because the Mzungu has been able to erase our history, but it's because we spiraled down so far that literally we don't even have the consciousness to comprehend the ages before this one, because this is probably the lowest we've ever come, family. Special shout out to the ancestors who are always in the wind, and to everyone that supports us on Patreon, our deep Patreon family. We love you so much. You guys have enabled us to continue to share the awakening news. And to everyone who supports us on PayPal, there's a gift for you in the mail, so definitely check that out. So, you know, I've been getting a lot of questions over the last couple of months about tarot readers. What is my thoughts on tarot readers? What do I think? Is it biblical? I mean, even when you said, how do you even send me such a question? But, you know, a lot of people wanting me to give my opinion, etc., etc. And for me, what I feel, family, is we are in the age of the prophets and the seers. I've told you that we are in a deep, deep mental war. The war has already been won. It's like a multi-dimensional war, which means we're fighting from the spiritual to the mental, to the emotional, to the physical, to the psychic. All those different dimensions are in contention. And Mama Earth is what, you know, some scholars would call a contested world. But the hardest level of this war, because spiritual, it was easy. Physical follows everything else. Physical is just the body. The most contested part is the mental dimension, or what you could call the soul dimension. Soul being a mixture of your thoughts and your emotions, stories for other days. I hope we've graduated from those levels, but if we haven't, it's okay. I could definitely do a course on that kind of stuff, family. Anyway. So with the mental warfare is proving to be the hardest, because we're fighting for the consciousness of the world, the group think. And Babylon has done so much to control. Actually, while we were thinking they were colonizing us physically and we were looking at our land, they were colonizing us mentally. They are like 100 years ahead with this mental colonization. And their next step was now the chip in the brain. Because they realized if you control the mental, you control everything, because you can keep the spiritual up. You can keep the spiritual out, so we won't be able to hear the voice of God, the voice of our angels. And through the mental, you can keep the physical controlled and then put people in timeline loops. But the biggest game changers, family, have been the prophets and the seers of this age. There are so many from different groups that are channeling different galactic councils, different, you know, higher level beings who they call gods and goddesses. Some are even, you know, channeling Jesus. I wonder if it's the figment in the sky or the real master. Stories for other days. But however they are manifesting, this is part of the army of the Most High. This is how the spiritual councils, our spiritual teams, have seen it best fit for us to bring down this devil. And the prophets and seers have manifested in whatever their reality allows them to manifest. Some of them have manifested as pastors, evangelists, prophets, healers, all in that Christian realm. Some are secret generals, private healers, but they have been developed in a certain space. I remember, and I've told this story before, I remember there's this lady. She was definitely a master, very much though in the Christian side, but definitely a master. And I learned so much from her. And I especially learned my role, as a intercessor for a nation, where she told me how, at that time, Kenya, we'd just gone through like an Al-Shabaab attack and all this stuff. And she told me how, it looked like the generals were being replaced, so there was something going on with the generals in Kenya. And she was like, there were silent generals who the Most High would use and he would awaken them, and they would pray and fast. They'd be told to pray and fast for a week, to go on a water fast for a week and just cry for the nation. And we would avert, a catastrophe. Or they would be moved to certain locations where no one really knew them. They were just in like the village where I live. But just the fact that they were there and they walked with certain angelic beings and everything, it affected the whole community. So that's something that I've always carried deeply with me, family. The Spirit will get in touch with us and get us to do things, to pray for certain people. And as a prophet and a seer, you always want to sharpen that gift, because sometimes you're woken up and you don't know what's going on. Like recently, we had a tragedy here in Kenya. I'll talk about it because it was a huge soul harvest. And I was woken up like half an hour before it happened, and I didn't sleep the rest of the night from like 3 a.m. all the way through till the morning, family. And it's like sometimes you're awakened for, why awaken me if I couldn't be clear to pray on that? Or maybe I wasn't supposed to pray on that because that is an event that must come to pass. So these are the challenges of being a prophet and a seer, family. But we are in the season where a lot, the Most High, they talk about this in Revelations. They talk about how the Most High, I think that the daughters would see visions and the sons would prophesy, or old men would prophesy. You can see the quote here. Those are the times we're in. And I've been watching various different prophets. I feel sometimes our energy connects, and because AI is now actually becoming almost scarily intuitive, they're leading, or maybe it's spirit playing in the AI, who knows, they're leading us to some of the important messages. Because for me, family, especially when I was dealing with my family drama, and they were doing a lot to block my first eye, I relied very heavily, especially on my African-American sisters, who at that time, some were saying they're prophetic, some were using cards, but to me it was always the voice that I needed to hear, and I send my love to them so much. We honor the ancestors in the wind. But they were able to give me clues like this. My spirit was able, because there was interference between my mental and my spiritual, my guardian angels found another way to communicate to me. And sometimes I'd be shown when the enemy is coming by listening to a certain message, because everything for me became so meditative and intuitive. That's why I don't know if it was A or not, but you go onto YouTube and there's a message that you need to hear at that time. But there came seasons where I over-relied on that voice, on those voices, and they almost put me in a time loop. But for the most part, it was positive for me, family. But there is a time, especially this thing of this pain, this childhood pain, family, with our, with that book of life that has closed out, the things that were done for us, the childhood trauma and everything. Sometimes you can get into loops of listening to that kind of stuff, what your karmic mother did to you, what your, and that means you're just reliving that timeline. And that is one of the dangers. So, I put 5 things that I would say, in the age of the prophets and the seers, the first thing you have to recognize is that whatever the prophet or the seer is telling you will resonate in your heart. You will know it to be true for yourself. It will almost be like you talking to yourself. And most of the time, almost 90% of the time, family, it's a confirmation. And it's only when it's a confirmation that it should also be taken as an instruction. If it's not a confirmation, you should not be taking the instruction from whatever you're listening to, be it a prophecy, be it a reading, whatever. A message from Metatron or whatever they say. So another important thing is that, I've even written them down, is to avoid narrative traps and matrix loops. Recognize everything you attract is on your vibration, is on your level. And so if you have done a certain healing and you feel you're on a next level, you should not be listening to the same messages, be they prophetic or whatever the message is. You should not be taking in the same thing. Because for me, family, when I was in that season, I found that I really needed a cheerleader. And I found a lot of the prophetesses and the seers out there, the messages that I would connect to, really served as cheerleading, as to just keep me going, keep me moving. Sometimes they also served as clarity, but we have to avoid the time loops. And that's where this kind of stuff is dangerous. Because we've been groomed and trained all our lives to give our power to an external thing. Whether that external thing is asking for your power or not. And to realize that all prophets and seers are also going through their journey. And the journey of the prophet and the seer is one of the toughest journeys, family, and intuitives and whatever you want to call them. Because we are held to such a high standard. And the enemy of our souls is always coming after us. And sometimes we can just find ourselves, sometimes even spiritually, being diverted. That's why we have to, remain fresh. And those are the dangers of making something like, being a prophet or a seer your main works. And you'll see that right now, platforms like YouTube are forcing the seers and the prophets, while they've been a great transition and escape, giving a lot of the prophetesses, a lot of the seers, a lot of the intuitives, a lot of the gifted, a way to get out of Babylon, a way to provide a secure home for their family, and an important stepping stone to transition them. Babylon quickly makes you comfortable. And what I feel as I've removed myself from that space, now whenever I go into that space once in a while, I feel kind of the exhaustion of some of these prophets and seers, because YouTube is getting harder, family. If you want the same money, you gotta push out those shows so that you stay in the wave of Babylon. If you miss a day, Babylon will penalize you. You can't even take a week off. You'll go out of the rhythm, and then you have to build your rhythm again. And so that's where I see there's almost like a manipulation of power. That's why you have to realize the battlefield, the odds are stacked against you as seers and as prophets. And we have to be strong enough to really, to go deeper into our faith and to move. We acknowledge the ancestors in the wind. And to move from this being a stepping stone and making us comfortable to transitioning now into something greater, because we've already tapped into our gifts. And to those who seek prophets and seers, which is how oracles were the way people moved. There were even a royal king never moved without the oracle. But those are stories I may get into in another day. But even you who is seeking, who is guided by your ancestors, you have to always remain in your sovereignty. And remain, test the spirits. Continuously test the spirit. The one that gave you a message yesterday may not have your message today or tomorrow. Even me, maybe, and I noticed that when I used to be there was a time I was actually a prophet in a church family, but when I was into that, I had a certain community. And breaking out of that community and going back to my traditional ancestral family, it was really painful because a lot of people, now we started clashing because I was moving this way and they were moving that way. So I was no longer their voice, and that's totally fine. And there are those who we've walked this whole journey together, and that's also totally fine. But I didn't want to make this so long. Another thing I found, and a lot of the people who are seers and prophets, we've already been groomed and trained for this. This is not our first gig. We're not being allowed on here to, to just mess with the population. We are part of the Most High's army. Give thanks to the ancestors. We are part of the spiritual army family. So we have to avoid the fatigue. We have to avoid the traps of the matrix that try and keep us in the same loop. For views or whatever, you keep talking about romance, or you keep talking about the family that hates them, because you'll know those people will attract you. These are the things that the algorithms and AI tries to get you. AI wants you to produce this. They want you to say, oh, blue is your favorite? Okay, you can only have blue forever. No, you can't add yellow. No, you can't add red. If you do red, if you add red and yellow to the mix, we're not going to show you your people that much. So that's why you really have to ride that wave of to financial freedom, and then hop off that wave to the wave of your self-sovereignty. But what I feel, family, is and another thing is yes, we have to know what to share. And this I've found especially in my individual life, family, because I actually don't even where I live in the village, very few people even know me, which is fantastic. And, you'll tell your friends you're a seer, but they're kind of yeah. But if I was my friend, I'd want to know, yo, Mumbi, what's happening to me? What should I be ready for in 2024? I'd be ready. Is there a message for me? Are your ancestors talking to you through, But a lot of people just dismiss that stuff and they laugh about it. But I've learned that sometimes my nosy ass ancestors and guardian angels are just giving me information as an FYI. And most of the time, I know way more about the people I'm hanging out with than I'll probably ever share. And that's something I learned the hard way, family. Because people aren't always ready to hear the truth, and they don't want to. And sometimes they can hate you for telling them the truth. And it's been very liberating to not feel burdened. When I first started this journey, I thought I was here to save the world and do all this stuff. So anytime someone's ancestor would come and tell me, yo, please tell, Susan, blah, 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 I'd be looking for any way. I'd be burdened. But now it's unless they ask, I ain't saying nothing. And it's made my life way more peaceful. Unfortunately, sometimes it looks like I cut guys off and I'm, always changing my friend circles, but most of the time it's because I know way more than I can share. But that thing of knowing what to share, and I think that's been the challenge for prophets for time immemorial, where some of our, some who are in the same area of gifting got themselves killed for saying the wrong thing, but we're not in that season anymore. No one's getting killed for nothing. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is be sure for who you're connected to. And this is both for the seer and prophets and those who are tuning in looking for messages. Because what I've found is that I don't go looking for the messages. The messages find me when the time is right. So make sure that you're not getting addicted to hearing those outside voices. And be sure of your connection first. And that's why I say focus on self, family, because you meet who you are. So if you're still on this level, you meet prophets and seers who are on this level. The higher you go and the more sophisticated you get in your thinking and your feeling, the more sophisticated the kind of, prophets and seers and healers you can meet, true masters who won't be here to tell you, this is not the woman you should marry and all that basic stuff, but who will be able to give you certain keys that will help you jump decades ahead. But hey, those are stories. Father Days, thanks to every single person that supports us on Patreon. We appreciate, love you so much. This is a segment, Ask Dr. Mumbi, where we take the most, asked questions and we kind of decide which ones to answer based on also the energy and the feeling. So get in touch, mumbi.seraki@gmail.com. Tuko pamoja.